Welcome on in. Belly up, have a seat, grab a drink as we talk some Wingman fantasy football. Welcome on into another edition of Wingman Fantasy Football, the league podcast. I'm your host, Michael Furley, and as always, I'd like to thank all of you, or any of you who may be watching or listening to today's show. It is Wednesday, December 17th. This is episode 215, and it's time to take a look at the Waiver Wire Show. In this show, we will begin to prepare you for Week 16, and we'll start off with some player news, take a glance at some of those waiver wire targets. Strap in. We're going to get into another Mike Rant for this week, and then we'll preview the first 8 games of the slate for the Week 16 action. But before we do any of that, I'd like to make sure that everybody is in the room.
Wingmen assemble!
All right. I want to thank you guys for joining me today. Either congratulations for making it into your semifinals, or you guys simply have a problem and can't get off of fantasy football as the season winds down. Nonetheless, I want to thank you all for joining me today. All right, let's get into some player news. The news is light only because it's so early in the week. So just because I don't mention players today just means there wasn't any updates. So let's start off here. We got Jawhar Jordan from the Houston Texans was signed to the 53-man roster. This move was not required for them to keep using him. However, this does prevent other teams from signing Jawhar Jordan from the practice squad away from the Texans. Tyler Higbee will not be activated from the IR this week, meaning Colby Parkinson will remain the top tight end option for the Rams in Week 16. Chris Rodriguez, who missed last week with a groin injury, has returned to practice, logging in a full session on Tuesday. Jaden Daniels will continue to practice with the team for the rest of the season. However, he is not going to return to the field as Marcus Mariota will remain the starter for the last 3 weeks of the regular season. Christian Watson, who left last week with a chest injury, was unable to practice on Tuesday, as did Roma Dunze. Also did not practice on Tuesday with that late scratch on Sunday that really hurt some managers here. Bam Knight, running back for the Arizona Cardinals, was placed on the IR, meaning Michael Carter and Emari Demercado will be the only running backs left of relevance on the Cardinals for the rest of the season. Tua Tagovailoa may be benched in favor of rookie Quentin Ewers, as the Mike McDaniel says all options are on the table regarding the starting quarterback for the Dolphins going forward. And Devontae Adams, who left last week with a hamstring injury, did miss practice on Tuesday. However, the team has not yet ruled him out for Week 16, at least as of yet. Friendly reminder, we do have a couple injuries to running backs who left last week. I don't have any updates on these guys, but I just want to remind you that we had Devin Neal left early for the Saints. We had Woody Marks leave early last week with an ankle injury, although they said he could have returned. And then we had RJ Harvey did not finish the game with a rib injury. All these guys right now are listed as questionable, and there hasn't been any updates yet, as they haven't really gotten to full practice mode until Wednesday or later for these players who play on Sunday or later in the week. All right, guys, it is now time to take a look at this week's waiver wire targets.
Wingman Fantasy Football Waiver Wire Target.
All right, guys, I got a few people in every position here, and I want to let you know that not only who they're playing this week, but who they're playing in the championship week, because some of these guys you might be able to get a week early and get them for free, if not very cheap, at least if you get ahead of the game. So even if your waiver wire runs by the time you see this show, this will still give you a heads up on who maybe to pick up ahead of Week 17, and you can do that as early as today. Our first quarterback on the list is Marcus Mariota. He's playing against the Philadelphia Eagles this week, so this is not a great week, but the Commanders are playing the Dallas Cowboys in Week 17. If you are struggling with quarterback options and you're doing this week to week, get ahead of it as the Dallas Cowboys in week 17 give up the most points to quarterbacks, and there might be a free streamer out there for you to pick up. We got Tyler Shough. It's probably been picked up by now, but he's got 2 easy games to finish out the fantasy season here, playing the New York Jets in week 16 and the Tennessee Titans in week 17. Gardner Minshew, not really sure how he's going to do filling in for Patrick Mahomes. However, they're playing the Tennessee Titans in week 16 in a tough matchup against Denver in week 17. And Phillip Rivers, I don't expect much from him, but nonetheless, it is a starting quarterback that's available, playing San Francisco this week on Monday night, and then Jacksonville Jaguars the following week in week 17. So if I had to rate these guys, depends on what you need, of course. It would be Marcus Mariota and Tyler Shough on top by far, Minshew and Rivers on the bottom there. If you need a player for this week, it would be between Shough and Minshew. If you need a player for both weeks, it would be Shough. And if you can roster 2 guys and stream them, I'd really try and get Marcus Mariota on your team for week 17. So we're down to the end here in terms of what we need here and how much we're willing to spend. So it's hard to say exactly how much fab budget we would put on this. But if you don't need them, keep in mind what your potential opponents might need. If you have an opponent out there or a potential championship matchup opponent who is streaming quarterbacks, you got to pick up Marcus Mariota and get the block now, even if you don't need him. And then Tyler Shough would be second there. You could play Minshew this week if you're desperate. So let's see. You can play Minshew or Shough this week. I would probably rate them. I don't know. I'd probably rate him Shough just because I know he can run the ball a little bit. Might run in for a touchdown. And then of all these guys, yeah, you know what I'm saying here. So we got Mariota for week 17 and Tyler Shough for 16 and 17, and Gardner Minshew for 16 only, and Phillip Rivers not for any of them, to be honest with you. So prioritize those accordingly for your needs, and block. You don't want to waste all your money on blocks, but some of these guys, you can get ahead of the game here and pick them up for free, and then you can drop them right before their game starts or before their waiver period would begin, and that way that you can block them and then pick up somebody else who will help you later in the week of need. All right, on to running backs this week. There's not a lot of clarity in terms of which starting running backs might miss time. So we're just going to go through these guys real quick. We've got Jawhar Jordan for the Houston Texans. Again, we don't know about Woody Marks or even Nick Chubb, who missed last week, as I expect they might both come back this week. Nonetheless, the Houston Texans have a great schedule this week, especially. The Houston Texans are playing against Las Vegas in week 16 and the Chargers in week 17. So a tough matchup in week 17 here. But this upcoming week, Jawhar Jordan is a smash play if Woody Marks and or Nick Chubb are out. But that's the question. We don't know if they're out yet or not. And we don't know how much money to spend on someone that we may not use. Again, if your priority is blocking an opponent, I would definitely pick him up because we don't want your opponent to have a potential smash play this week. But there is no guarantee he will be a positive play for you this week, as Woody Marks might get back on the field. However, this game is a little bit easier for the Houston Texans, although they have not guaranteed a playoff spot yet, so they're not looking to be play silly here. But being that this is the easier of the 2 matchups, they might let Woody Marks sit, even if he is close to being healthy. All right, we've got Audric Estime for the New Orleans Saints. If Devin Neal misses time, he's going to be the next man up, most likely. A big back up against the New York Jets this week. Oh my, they just stopped tackling all of a sudden. They've been a good matchup all year, but even better as of late, as we had Etienne and Bashal Tutin scored combined 4 touchdowns last week. And the week prior, we had, I don't know, did Gordon score? I'm not sure, but Jalen Wright scored. I think Ollie Gordon scored too, and Devon Achane all scored the week prior. So the Jets are really giving up a ton of points to running backs. So Audric Estime I'd put him in your starting lineup if we found out Devin Neal is out. He's a potential starter this week. Again, block or pick up. But between these 2 guys, Jordan, if he plays, and Estime are both very startable options this week. All right, going on to our Arizona running backs. They both have great matchups here. With Bam Knight being out for the year, Trey Benson not being activated from the IR, it's going to be Emari Demercado and Michael Carter the rest of the way. It's really hard to decide which one you like to play the best. Michael Carter is more the 2-down back, and Demercado does get less work, but he's in the 3rd down role and 2-minute drill and gets some long screen passes. So it's kind of pick your flavor, what type of running back you want the most. I believe Michael Carter will get more of the work. However, the Arizona Cardinals aren't a great running team, and they're always playing from behind. So there's a chance that the third down back is just as valuable. Nonetheless, let's let you know who they're playing. They're playing Atlanta in Week 16 and Cincinnati Bengals in Week 17. The Cincinnati Bengals give the most points to the running back position, so this is a championship streaming matchup again. Block, block, block. So for this week, I'd block your opponent from getting Jordan or Estime from the Texans and the Saints, respectively. And then if you're looking for a potential Week 17 matchup to either stream or block your opponent, I'd pick up one, if not both, of the Arizona running backs. Other players we might consider here is if RJ Harvey misses any time, we've got Tyler Badie out there would be the backup mixed in with Jaleel McLaughlin. They don't have a great schedule going forward against Jacksonville Week 16 and Indianapolis in Week 17. And Javonte Williams did miss some time in the last game, although he did come back in, but he was getting kind of shaken up with that shoulder here. Malik Davis would be the backup running back, would be the starting running back if Javonte Williams misses anytime. They're playing the Chargers this week. Not a great matchup, but the Washington Commanders is a decent matchup in Week 17. So how would I rate these guys? Honestly, I think Woody Marks is the most healthy of the guys. I think RJ Harvey and Woody Marks are more likely to play this week unless Houston wants to just rest Woody Marks. In that case, Jawhar Jordan and Audric Estime are the main pickups for this week. Demercado and Carter are the main pickups for next week. And Estime has a potential playability for the next 2 weeks as they're playing the Jets and the Tennessee Titans. So if you need a 2-week run, Estime is the way to go. A this week run, Jawhar Jordan and Estime. And if you need a Week 17 runner block, Demercado and Carter are the plays here. On to our receivers here. This might be a little different now because of the potential news of Tua Tagovailoa being benched. Again, he's not a great player, Tua, but he does have an eye for Darren Waller in the end zone, and Darren Waller is playing in Cincinnati this week and Tampa Bay next week. I picked up Darren Waller 2 weeks ago for this matchup in Week 16 against Cincinnati. However, with the quarterback change, I'm a little not as bullish on this as I would have been otherwise. But Darren Waller, if he's out there, again, the best matchup in the league, other than what the Baltimore Ravens do against him. Every other team gets tons and tons and tons of tight end points against Cincinnati. We also have Mathew Golden with Dontavian Wicks missing practice. Mathew Golden missing practice. Not Mathew Golden, sorry. Christian Watson missing practice. Matthew Golden had one of his better games in the second half last week, and he's got 2 decent matchups up against Chicago Bears this week and the Baltimore Ravens in Week 17. I wouldn't put any money on Golden, maybe 1, 2, or 3% at most as a back end of your bench here, but maybe he'll get going here in the last couple weeks. You probably wouldn't start him, but if you need a back bencher here, he's someone to consider. Darren Waller is a startable player this week, as is Dalton Schultz, who's playing against the Las Vegas Raiders this week and the Chargers next week. So I'd rate these guys Waller, because if you pick him up, you can play him. Schultz, same, and Matthew Golden as a speculative ad. But again, how much more time do we have to waste on speculation? So that's the case here. And Waller, if you're going on the matchup and don't care about the quarterback, he's a good 35%er at this point because you're picking him up to play him, especially at the tight end position. Our kickers of note here, I've got Evan McPherson for the Cincinnati Bengals. Has a good matchup to finish the year here. The Miami Dolphins and the Arizona Cardinals. The Cardinals give up 40 points a game in the last 5 weeks or so. So there's going to be tons of opportunities for Evan McPherson in Week 17 against the Arizona Cardinals. I got Blake Grupe this week against San Francisco and the Jacksonville Jaguars in Week 17. If you're not aware, he plays for the Indianapolis Colts. His last 2 games are both inside Indianapolis. So I kind of have a feeling that Phillip Rivers can move the ball within the 30s, but maybe not get in the end zone here. So potential kicks for Blake Grupe. And Jake Moody as well, playing against Philly this week. A little bit of a tough matchup, but they give up a lot of points to kickers, to be honest with you. But they're also playing the Dallas Cowboys, are the Commanders, in Week 17. So there's a chance for some points for the kicker for Washington. So I got McPherson with 2 good matchups. Grupe with 2 tougher matchups, both inside, and Moody, 2 pretty good matchups against Philadelphia and Dallas to finish out the year. Now for our streaming defenses. All right, guys, time to pay attention. These are the ones we're looking at here as most teams are streaming defenses at this time of year. All right, we got the New Orleans Saints, who have 2 positive matchups against the Jets this week and the Titans next week. We've got the New York Giants, who play against Minnesota this week, who give up the most points to defenses, although they did only give up 1 point last week to Dallas. But the Giants are also playing the Raiders in week 17, so they've got 2+ matchups as well, do the Giants. Cincinnati is playing against Miami with a potentially rookie starting quarterback making his first start. Those are always juicy matchups. And also Cincinnati's playing against Arizona. Brissett has a tendency to throw a couple picks as well. We have the Tennessee Titans this week against Kansas City. That's only if you really think Gardner Minshew might make a ton of mistakes. And Tennessee's playing New Orleans in week 17. I've got Detroit against Pittsburgh this week and Minnesota in week 17. If you think Minnesota has not turned around their offense here, Minnesota is the best matchup in terms of fantasy defenses points scored against. So that's why I have Detroit here. And then I've got Pittsburgh, who's playing against Detroit this week. That's not a good play, but against Cleveland, there's always a chance for a ton of sacks and negative yards from Shedeur Sanders. So if I had to rate these guys here, who's the best defense on this list? I think Detroit's the best defense of the 6 I just mentioned. I'll go through them again real quick. Detroit's the best, but that doesn't have necessarily the best matchups. They got Pittsburgh this week and Minnesota next week, and that's all depending if you think J.J. McCarthy has turned it around or not. In terms of defenses that have 2 good matchups, that's New Orleans with the Jets and Tennessee, the Giants with Minnesota. Same question we had if we think Minnesota's turn it around or not. But the Giants play Minnesota and Vegas, Cincinnati, Miami, Arizona. So those are my top 4, I would say. New Orleans, Giants, Cincinnati, and Detroit. Probably in that order. All right, guys. Thank you for joining me for that right there. Now it's time to get into this week's Mike Rant.
Baby Rant. Karen Rant. Monty. I don't care whose fault it is. I'm going to tell you exactly what I think.
Mike Rant.
I got 2 points to rant about this time. First of all, let's start with the Baltimore tight ends. We planned for the last 4 weeks to stream these tight ends in our playoff matchups against the Cincinnati Bengals. They give up tons and tons of points to every single tight end they face. It's been the truest thing in fantasy football. But this time around, we have Lamar Jackson throwing only 8 passes and no targets go to Isaiah Likely and only 1 or 2 catches for Mark Andrews. This was devastating to our managers out there. I got the goose with Isaiah Likely, and I did not advance this time as this past week as well. So it was brutal for me, and I know I was not the only one. As much as I want to blame the Baltimore Ravens, I blame the Cincinnati Bengals for not holding up their end of the bargain, not scoring points at all, and having a devastatingly poor day by Joe Burrow. All right, along the same lines as gooses that cost some managers here, Rome Odunze, with the latest of scratches, was deemed active during the 90-minute inactive list report, but with 5 minutes to kick off said he was a scratch. When majority of fantasy platforms out there lock your lineups, you could not pivot in time. This is a conspiracy. They're throwing the games. Not good, not fair. These 2 gooses with Likely and Rome Odunze probably cost so many managers a chance to advance in the playoffs, and I'm not having it. I'm going to rant this week on these unnecessary gooses. If you did survive, however, congratulations, and you should just thank your lucky stars. You get to go the next week and play on from here. All right, guys, we're going to get into this week's NFL preview for Week 16, where we're going to break down the first 8 games of the NFL schedule. Friendly reminder, not only do we have our Thursday game between the LA Rams and the Seattle Seahawks, but we also have 2 Saturday games this week, so do not be caught off guard. Make your transactions and drops accordingly, so you can either pick up, drop, or have guys ready to go. So with that being said, let's get into the NFL previews. Starting off with our Thursday night game. We have a huge matchup between the LA Rams at 11-3 heading into Seattle, who is also 11-3. The winner of this game is going to control their destiny in terms of winning the division and maybe even potentially getting a first round bye. The over-under on this game is 44 points, so kind of middle-low. The LA Rams are a road favorite at -1 point. All right, guys, I'm going with the over on this one, and I'm actually picking Seattle to win and cover. I went back and forth on this one, but it's so close. I'm going to go with the home team, Seattle Seahawks. All right, what players can we play in this matchup, and which players are we looking to sit? Let's start with the visiting LA Rams. We've got Matthew Stafford, who's rated as the 5th best quarterback in terms of points per game, but in a tough matchup against Seattle, who gives it the 7th fewest. Again, I put this as a could start. I'm going to break down what I mean by could start in just a moment here. All right, I've got 5 designations: must play, should play, could play, should sit, and must sit. And when I say could play, it sounds a little worse than it is. It just means these are guys that we're going to probably put in our lineup. And unless we have super smash starts around them, that's the only way these guys are going to be benched. These guys are in your lineup. They're just not expecting their best to hit their highest ceiling. So Matthew Stafford is a could play, which means he's in your lineup unless you have one of the top 2 quarterbacks above him. Like, for example, I got Jalen Hurts rated above him this week. So unless you've got Stafford and Hurts, Stafford's in your lineup. So just a message there. When I say could play, they're starters unless you've got someone else who I have later who's a must start. All right, at running back, Kyren Williams.
Release the Kraken.
Rated 8th in terms of points per game, but again, a tough matchup against the Seattle defense who gives up the 6th fewest. So we have an elite offensive player against a near elite defense. Again, they're going to wash themselves out as a neutral play. A could start, Kyren Williams will be in your lineup. Puka Nacua, man, this one is another bad matchup for him, but he's the number 1 rated receiver in terms of points per game, but he's going against the defense who gives the 2nd fewest. Again, just a wash in terms of tough matchup for best player out there. So it's going to be a could start here. We're going to put, or could play. He's going to be in your lineup no matter what. Moving on to the tight end, we've got Colby Parkinson, one of the hottest tight ends in the league. He's rated 26th overall in points per game, but he is on a hot streak lately. And this is actually one of the good matchups against the Seattle defense, who gives the 7th most points to the tight end position. In terms of a tight end play, I'm just going to, I'll still put him as a could start no matter what there, because I don't want to, it's not the combination of player and matchup. He's probably going to be in your lineup, but there's potential options for some better players out there. Nonetheless, he's a could. None of these guys are must sits or should sits. On the other hand, Harrison Mevis at the 26th rated kicker in points per game up against Seattle, who gives it the 4th fewest. So this one I have him as a should sit. And the defense for the LA Rams are the 8th best in terms of points scored in fantasy, and they're up. It's a pretty neutral matchup here, so they're going to be a could play as well. Play the LA Rams as you normally would. Don't go out of your way to sit them or play them. If they were in your lineup before, they could be in your lineup again. Blake Corum here has been really doing quite well over the last few weeks here, splitting more and more carries with Kyren Williams. However, he is not quite as elite as Kyren Williams, and this matchup is just a little too tough in terms of a back-end flex. I'm not saying you can't play him. I'm saying you probably should sit Blake Corum this week. And Devontae Adams, I don't have him marking here because he's banged up. I don't expect him to play at this point. And even so, he has been slowing down quite a bit. And the risk of him aggravating an injury, even if he is active, you could play him based on. I would probably. Well, you could play him based on how good he's been for the whole year, but how good he's been lately, I'd probably put him as a should sit, especially with the injury concerns. On to the Seattle side of the ball, we've got Sam Darnold, rated as the 23rd quarterback in terms of points per game. It's a neutral matchup here against the Rams, who give up the 14th fewest points. Being that Sam Darnold is not the focal point of this team's ability to win here, I have him as a should sit. Again, he's been on our dud list more often than not, even in games that the Seattle Seahawks are winning. And I'm going to sit him once again. Ken Walker has been, frankly, a disappointment. Ken Walker is rated as the 31st running back in terms of points per game, but they're playing against the Rams, who give up the fewest points to running backs. You probably should have been sitting Ken Walker for the last 3 weeks. There's no reason to have a feeling that he's going to have a good week this week, he's a should sit. Kenneth Walker, look for other options in your RB2 and flex spots this week, guys. Now for Jackson Smith and Jigba, who just got passed by Puka Nacua in terms of points per game, still rated as number 2 overall. The Rams' one weak spot in their defense is the points allowed to wide receivers. Jackson Smith and Jigba is a must start this week. You would do it anyway, just trying to give you a little more confidence. Now for the tight end, A.J. Barner, a quality cog in the wheel for Seattle, but not a main target. The 23rd rated tight end in terms of points per game in a neutral matchup against the Rams, who give the 12th fewest. I'm going to put him down as a should sit. And Jason Myers last week I had as a should sit based on the matchup, and he was the number 1 scoring kicker. I will never doubt Jason Michael Myers again. Nonetheless, he's the number 1 kicker in all of fantasy football, and this matchup is just not strong enough to even consider sitting him this time. He's going to be a should start once again. And the Seattle defense gets the most points scored. They're the number 1 scoring defense in terms of fantasy. It is a tougher matchup against the Rams, who give up the 8th fewest points to defenses. However, you can't sit the number 1 defense in the league. They are going to be a could play at worst, and we're not looking for any other options. Being that the soft spot of the Rams defense is their passing, is what they allow to receivers. Cooper Kupp could be a play in terms of flex. He's not as good as a wide receiver 2, that's for sure. So he's a could play as a back-end flex. And Zach Charbonnet, we're going to stay away from here as well, as it's just too tough of a matchup for this game. All right, on to our next game, a Saturday night 5 p.m. kickoff, so keep that in mind as you have to set your lineups. The Philadelphia Eagles at 9-5 head over to the Washington Commanders, who are at 4-10. The over-under on this game is 44.5, and the Philadelphia Eagles are a road favorite at -6.5. I've got this one going over the 44.5 points, and I was going back and forth on the cover here, but I'm going with Philadelphia to win and cover this game on the road. And it came down to all the greens on the Philadelphia side as I broke down the matchup here. All right, on the quarterback spot, Jalen Hurts, the 4th best quarterback in terms of points scored per game, up against the Commanders, who give up the 8th most points to the quarterback position. It's just too much of a good matchup for a good quarterback. Jalen Hurts is a must start this week. Saquon Barkley sitting in the 15th spot in terms of points per game for the position. Again, a plus matchup as the Commanders give the 6th most points to running back. Again, just the way it is, a good player against an easy matchup is a must start. A.J. Brown's been playing better as of late. He's now up to the 14th rated wide receiver in terms of points per game, and the Commanders give the 7th most points. I'm always nervous with A.J. Brown, but just based on the points allowed and the points scored by the player, this is a must start for A.J. Brown. Again, all these guys are going to be in your lineup. This is more of a confidence reiteration here. All these guys so far are must starts. Dallas Goedert, a little streaky, I admit, but right now he's rated as the 7th tight end in terms of points per game, and the Commanders give up the 4th most points to tight end. You just can't help it. A good matchup for a good player is going to be a must start. Dallas Goedert is going to be a top 5 tight end this week in terms of our options here. All right, now for the kicker, Jake Elliott is actually lower than you think at 31 in terms of points per game for kickers. This matchup is neutral here, actually a little better than neutral. They give the 11th most points to the Washington defense here, Washington Commanders. But we're going to put this as a should sit as Jake Elliott. I think they're going to get a ton of touchdowns this week, so I expect 3 to 4 extra points, maybe 1 field goal here. So Jake Elliott is a should sit. There should be better options out there. Now for the defense. We've got the Philadelphia defense is rated as the 3rd best scoring defense in terms of points per game. In a neutral matchup, they are a should start, are the Eagles defense. And Devontae Smith, I've got him as a could play in the range of a flex or wide receiver 2. Not a wide receiver 2. I don't think he's that good, to be honest with you. I've got him, but I could play as a flex. If he's your wide receiver 2, I would consider other options as we go forward with other green matchups. All right. Although through the first 2 games, the only green matchups I have for receivers are Jackson Smith and Jigba and A.J. Brown. So at this point, he would sneak in as a wide receiver 2 from what we've gone so far. We've only gone through 3 teams. All right, on the Washington Commanders side of the ball here, Marcus Mariota is rated as the 35th quarterback in terms of points per game. The Philly defense gives up the 8th fewest. I like Mariota in week 17, but we're going to sit him this week. He is a must-sit for the Commanders this week. He should not be in your lineups. Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt last week showed out a little bit, but that was a plus matchup. I mentioned it last week between Rodriguez and Merritt. Whoever played was going to have a good game. Right now, he is not rated high enough in terms of his output, and the matchup is neutral at best. We're going to put this as a should sit for Merritt and Rodriguez. We'll see which one's going to be active here, but whichever one you think is the best of the two is still a should sit, as just the defense is a little too good, and these players are just not good enough for this play this week. Deebo Samuel is actually rated as the number 22 rated wide receiver in terms of points per game, and McLaurin is rated 25th. So these guys are pretty much the same ranked here. They're the ambiguously ranked duo. However, it is a tough matchup. Philadelphia gives up the 7th fewest points. I don't trust either of these guys, but based on how good they have been, they are could starts. I would say flexes to wide receiver 2s at best. Let's see here. Honestly, between this group here, I would actually consider Devontae Smith ahead of both Deebo Samuel and McLaurin. Definitely ahead of Samuel, maybe McLaurin. So these three guys are pretty close. They're ranked 22, 25, 26, but the better matchup is on the side of the Eagles. So with that being said, I would play Smith over the Commanders' receivers, but they're all in that flex range. The tight end here for the Commanders, Ben Sinnott, doesn't have any points to his name to consider him, and it's a tough matchup as the Philadelphia Eagles give up the 3rd fewest points. We're not going to play a tight end for the Commanders this week. And Jake Moody's actually been doing pretty well in terms of points scored, despite missing a kick now and again. He is the 6th highest rated kicker in terms of points per game, and the Philadelphia Eagles give up the 7th. With that, we're going to say Jake Moody is a should play this week. And the Commanders defense is not that high rated, and it's a tough matchup as well. It's a must sit for the Commanders defense. We already mentioned Chris Rodriguez. I have him as a should sit. That's up to you if you think he's better than a Devontae Smith, for example. On to our next game, another Saturday kickoff. This one's at 8:20 p.m. Another big-time matchup where the division lead is on the line. We've got the Green Bay Packers at 9-4-1 on a rematch from just a couple weeks back, heading into Chicago this time, where the Bears are 10-4. These teams are literally flip-flopping back and forth in division lead over the last 3 weeks here, so the winner of this game will control their destiny as well in terms of who will win the division, and they're still in play for a potential first-round bye. All right, the over-under on this game is 46.5, and Green Bay is a road favorite at -1. I'm going the under on this game here, guys. There's just too many red matchups for our players, so we're going to keep this score under the 46.5. However, I've got Green Bay winning this one on the road and covering the -1 point. So Green Bay, I winning this one and taking the division lead back. All right, let's look at some of our players here for the Green Bay Packers. Jordan Love is the 19th rated quarterback in points per game, but he's playing against Chicago, gives up the 7th most points. This is a could play. He's a solid streamer here, unless you have, Hurts or Stafford here. At this point, I got Stafford and Jordan Love kind of equal for this week. That'd be a personal preference. I'm just saying where they fall into the line here. Josh Jacobs, an elite running back. We saw that last week, even with a banged up knee here, is playing against the Chicago Bears, who are a middle-of-the-road defense in terms of stopping the running back. So we're going to keep Josh Jacobs in our lineups with some confidence here. He is a should start. Christian Watson, I have him injured right now, so he's rated 18th in terms of points per game. And the matchup is really good, so I like him if he's healthy, but he's just not quite healthy. So we're going to get into our other options in the flex range for our receivers, as they don't have an automatic number one receiver to take his place. Luke Musgrave, we're just going to sit him every game. He's not worth playing. Brandon McManus improved quite a bit after his good game last week. But again, a tough matchup against the Chicago Bears defense, who gives up the 5th fewest points. We're going to put him as a should sit. And the Green Bay defense, we keep mentioning over the last couple of weeks, they do not score fantasy points. And now with the absence of Micah Parsons, there's going to be even less pressure and potentially less sacks or two. So I have them as a should sit as the defense. Now for our flexes. These are the most intriguing part of this Green Bay Packer offense. I got Mathew Golden and Romeo Doubs both as could plays in the flex position, especially and actually only if Christian Watson is out. The best part of this matchup here is the passing game this week for the Green Bay Packers. We expect Josh Jacobs to do his thing, but Jordan Love should be able to rebound from last week here. I expect him to have a decent day, and he's going to have to throw to somebody. Mathew Golden and Romeo Doubs are next men up, mixed in with Jaden Reed, obviously, but Dontavian Wicks and Christian Watson both may miss this week. So any one of those three receivers, pick your poison, I guess, are all worth playing as your last flex spot if you are desperate. On the Chicago Bears side of the ball, Caleb Williams is moved up to being the 10th best quarterback in terms of points per game. However, this matchup is not very good as the Green Bay Packers give up the 10th fewest points to the quarterback position. So I'm going to put him here as a should sit. He's a back end flex, but I would put Jordan Love over Caleb Williams this week just to put it into context. DeAndre Swift has been solid all year, the 14th rated running back in points per game, but another tough matchup against Green Bay. He's been so good as DeAndre Swift, but this is the 1 week I'm looking for other options. I'm going to put him as a should sit. Honestly, he's probably still going to be in your lineup as your back end flex. It's hard to bench him here. Yeah, so I have him as should sit here. I'm going to actually change that on the fly. I'm going to put it as a could play, but he's going to move down from RB1 or 2 to RB2 or 3, depending on your team here. It's pretty hard to sit DeAndre Swift no matter the matchup, but nonetheless, I would expect a lower ceiling for DeAndre Swift. DJ Moore has moved up to the 31 rated receiver in terms of points per game in a neutral matchup against Green Bay, but this is the softest part of their defense. I've got DJ Moore as a could play if you want to try and catch up with what he did last week. The only problem with DJ Moore, he has one good game, 2 bad games. One good game, 2 bad games. The odds of him getting 2 good games back-to-back are slim, but Luther Burden is banged up, and Roman Dunze, he's going to be the only man out there. Colston Loveland, I had him as I should sit, but now that I'm talking about it here, if Burden and Roman Dunze is out, he is the number 2 receiver in this mix here. So Loveland I'm going to put as a emergency could play. I'm not excited to play him. I have him listed as a should sit, but being that he is going to be elevated in terms of looks and reads, I'm going to put him up a little bit, not as a flex, as a back-end tight end this week. Cairo Santos has been doing quite well for the Bears. It's a tough matchup as well, but he's been scoring points every week. He's a could play, as is the Chicago defense. It's a tough matchup here, but they are also in the top 10 in terms of scoring defenses. I have him as a could play them. Now, Kyle Monangai, I mentioned DeAndre Swift. I was going back and forth. I had him as a should sit to start with, but it's just so hard to do it. I just on the fly moved him up. So I'm going to keep Kyle Monangai down, though, in that should sit here. He's not quite good enough in that last week the snap count was way in Swift's favor. And the matchup is just too tough to expect 2 running backs to perform this week against the Packers. Our next game here is the Buffalo Bills heading into Cleveland to take on the Browns. The Bills, off a huge victory last week over the Patriots, are now 10-4, while the Cleveland Browns are 3-11. The over/under on this one is kind of low at 42 points, and Buffalo is projected to win by 10. I was going back and forth in terms of the spread here. And the over/under, I'm going to go over the 42 points. I expect Buffalo to get at least 24 points in this game, if not more, to keep their end of the bargain. And I'm really torn here on the spread is big, and if you follow me, I don't expect teams to cover the big spread, but I'm kind of going back and forth on this one. I'm going to do an on-the-fly switch. I had Cleveland covering. I'm going with Buffalo. Buffalo is going to destroy Cleveland this week. I've got Buffalo winning and Buffalo covering the 10-point spread this week. All right, let's look at the Buffalo Bills. All right, we got Josh Allen, the number 1 rated quarterback, but a tough matchup against the Browns, who give up the 4th fewest points. Nonetheless, we are never sitting Josh Allen. He is a could play this week. Similar for James Cook, rated number 6 in terms of points per game, but the matchup is not very good at the 9th fewest points allowed by the Browns. We're not sitting Cook. He's a could play as well. Khalil Shakir, rated as number 40 against the team who gives up the 14th fewest. He's their only receiver right now, guys. If they keep cutting guys, swapping guys, Khalil Shakir, if you're going to play receiver, he's the only one to play. So I have him as a could play. but obviously there's other receivers out there that we are looking to play ahead of any Buffalo receiver. Dalton Kincaid, however, is rated as the 10th best tight end in terms of points per game, and this matchup is right in the middle. We're going to put Dalton Kincaid in our lineup. I don't trust Dawson Knox, even though he's been quite good the last 2 weeks. I think Kincaid has been getting healthier and healthier, and Knox is going to get less and less of the snaps. However, if you want to go crazy and put Knox in, that's up to you. But just because of the type of player this is, I'm going to say he's a should sit. And in case you weren't aware, Michael Badgley has just been signed to do the kicking duties for the Buffalo Bills as Matt Prater is now injured. A neutral matchup, a neutral kicker, a high-scoring game in terms of one side of the ball. I'm going to put Badgley as a could play. And then the Buffalo defense is playing against a team who gives up the 5th most points to defenses. Buffalo defense is a must start this week. Anytime you get a chance to play against Cleveland, you're going to put your defense in the lineup. On the Cleveland side of the ball, this one's pretty easy. Shedeur Sanders is a must sit. Quinshon Judkins you can actually play here because the only weakness the biggest weakness in the Buffalo Bills defense is against the running game. Quinshon Judkins has been slowing down over the last 6 weeks or so, but if Cleveland's going to move the ball, it's going to be on the ground, and it's going to be via Quinshon Judkins. Remember, Jerome Ford went on the IR. Dylan Sampson's banged up. They're going to have to find a way to move the ball, and the running game is going to be a way to go. You should start Quinshon Judkins if you don't feel comfortable here. I put him as a flex, maybe not RB2, but honestly, the matchup just is really good for him right here, so he should do quite well. We saw what Travion Henderson did last week against the Buffalo Bills. I think Judkins maybe can't do that, but he's going to be in that same range. Jerry Jeudy must sit. Harold Fannon's been great, but again, the Bills give up the fewest points to tight ends. We're going to put him as a must sit. Just too tough of a matchup. The kicker, Andre Smith, we're going to sit him as well. And the Cleveland Browns defense, we can play them as they're going to be hunting for sacks over and over and over again. They're going to go for it and sell out. They're not worrying about winning this game. So we're going to play you could play the Cleveland defense. They're not a smash play this week, but they're one of the top 10 defenses. So we're going to go with them as well. Our next game here is the LA Chargers at 10-4, heading into Dallas, who is now 6-7-1. The over-under is a pretty high 49.5 points, and the LA Chargers are a road favorite by 2 points. I'm going with the over on this one, and I'm taking the Chargers to win and cover. All right, let's look at some of our options on the Chargers side of the ball. Justin Herbert is rated as the 12th quarterback in terms of points per game, but the Dallas Cowboys give the very most points to the quarterback position. We've got to play him. It's a must play. J.J. McCarthy had a good game last week. Justin Herbert should be fine this week. Emari Hampton, rated as number 18, surprisingly, as the in terms of points per game, is playing against Dallas. Of course, who give the 7th most points to the running back position. Last week, it took me a while to figure it out because they split carries and touches with Kamani Vidal, but Hampton was on the field for 35%. Vidal was on for 65%. But it seems like whenever Hampton's in, they give him the ball as they're trying to save his energy and maybe some coming back from the injury, not having to do all the dirty work and picking up blitzes and doing that kind of stuff. So I think both these guys you could play, but Emari Hampton is a must-play this week. Ladd McConkey's been struggling. He's rated down as 29th in terms of points per game for the receiver, but the Dallas Cowboys give the most points. I know we let y'all down, or I don't know if you blame me or not, but Justin Jefferson was let down last week, but Jalen Naylor had 2 touchdowns, among others here. So Ladd McConkey is going to get back in the good graces here. I have him as a could play right now just because he's been letting us down a little bit, but he should be in your lineup, guys. He's, in my opinion, I'm going to actually give the wingman bump. Ladd McConkey is a should start this week. Aronde Gadsden has been right in the middle here. It's a middle matchup. He is a could play as well. Cam Dicker is a should play. The LA Chargers defense is a could play as it's a good matchup as not a good matchup as the Dallas Cowboys give the 6th fewest points to defenses. That's a little volatile, though. And then Kamani Vidal, a little surprisingly still getting some work, not getting the high leverage plays that Emari Hampton is now. So I'm going to put him as a could play as a back-end flex. I'm not super excited about Vidal anymore, although he is a good player. It's just you're splitting carries here, and he's not getting the goal line work, if you will. And then Quentin Johnston's been a little up and down. He missed last week, so this all depends on health here. But again, the passing game here should be green. We're going to knock him down a little bit based on the injury and just the options that Herbert has. I'm going to put Quentin Johnston as a could play. He and McConkey could be flexes for you this week. On to the Dallas side of the ball, Dak Prescott, rated very high, the 6th highest rated quarterback in terms of points per game, but this is a tough matchup as the Chargers give up the 3rd fewest points to quarterbacks. I'm going to put Prescott as a could play this week, as he's been really good, even when he doesn't get high fantasy points. He's playing well, just not always getting touchdowns. So I have him as a could play here, but I would play Herbert over Prescott, in my opinion. Javonte Williams, a top 10 running back in a neutral matchup here, has a nose for the end zone. He was a little banged up last week, so we're going to monitor that later in the week. But assuming all things are healthy, he is a should start as well, as he just always does a very solid, has solid games for the Cowboys. Now for our George Pickens and CeeDee Lamb. Both these guys are rated very high. Pickens actually rated higher than CeeDee Lamb. However, this is the toughest matchup in terms of receivers. So I'm going to put these guys as could plays. They're just too good to sit here. But I would lower your expectations that this really is a tough matchup for those receivers. Jake Ferguson at the tight end, a top 10 tight end with a top 10 matchup. He is a should play in terms of tight end options. Brandon Aubrey had a tough game last week, missing a couple field goals. However, he's always going to be in your lineup. And the Dallas defense is a could play, as the LA Chargers are giving up tons and tons of sacks over the last 3 weeks. Ryan Flournoy, we're not looking to play him right now as a third receiver, only because the matchup is so difficult for wide receivers against the Chargers. All right, guys, we got 3 more games to go. I know with all these no bye weeks, there's a lot more games to go over. All right, our next game is the Kansas City Chiefs heading into Tennessee, where the Chiefs have now been eliminated from the playoffs, are at 6-8 against the Titans, who are at 2-12. The over-under is a very low 37.5, and Kansas City is favored by 3.5 on the road. I'm going to go with the under on this one. I just don't know how this was going to go with the how Kansas City is going to respond after being knocked out of the playoffs, losing their quarterback, even how well Gardner Minshew is going to play. I'm just not sure how this one's going to go. So I'm going to err on the side of going under. Yeah, for now. I'm going to pick Tennessee to cover the 3.5, but I'm going to pick Kansas City to win. Tennessee to cover and Kansas City to win on the road. All right, now for some questions. And we got a lot of questions now for the Chiefs, as everything's up in the air. You have new quarterbacks, everything can switch. I got Gardner Minshew here. He's not rated as any kind of quarterback this year, but it's a decent matchup against the Tennessee Titans, who give the 9th most points to the quarterback position. And honestly, they've been giving up more points to quarterbacks than running backs as of late. I would say you could play Minshew as a desperation. I mean, this is desperation. If you had Mahomes and you have no other backup, you could play Minshew, for example. I'd probably rather play Tyler Shough this week against the Jets, but I'm just saying that you could play him if you have no other options here, as he will be on the field in a plus matchup. Kareem Hunt, rated as number 31 in terms of running backs in points per game against the Titans, who give the 9th most points. I mentioned it last time. The Titans went from the third best matchup to the 6th best matchup to the 9th best matchup, and they've held for those 2 straight weeks as the 9th best matchup. So this is the first time they haven't improved in a couple weeks here. I'm going to put him as a could play, as I think they're not going to trust Minshew in the short yardage areas. They're going to let Kareem Hunt get a short touchdown. Rashee Rice, an elite receiver in a great matchup. The Tennessee Titans give up the 4th most points to the wide receiver. You should start him. I would have put him as a must start, except for the fact that I just don't know what the Minshew factor will be. Nonetheless, we're going to go with Rashee Rice to help us get through the semifinals of our playoffs and try to get us into the championship. We did see, however, when Minshew came in, he threw his first 2 passes with Travis Kelce. Travis Kelce's rated number 5 in points per game. Travis Kelce will be in your lineup as a tight end. You could even put him in as a flex. So I think Minshew might rely on Kelce a little more than Mahomes had been throughout the year. Harrison Butker is a could play as he's not doing that well. It's number 22 overall in points per game for kickers, but the matchup is decent, a neutral matchup here. So he's a could play. I wouldn't look to cut him unless you get some better options. Like I cut him for Cam Dicker, who became available, for example, but I wouldn't cut him for like a Joey Sly on the other side of the ball here. All right, the defense for Kansas City. This is a really good matchup against the Tennessee Titans, who have given up the most sacks of anyone this year. So we're going to play the Kansas City Chiefs defense. Now for our flexes here with Xavier Worthy and Isaiah Pacheco. Again, this Gardner Minshew factor, I just don't know how many people are going to touch the ball this week. I'm going to say these guys should sit until we see how Minshew spreads the ball around. On the other side of the ball, the Tennessee Titans, this one's going to be pretty easy. The matchups that they're playing against is neutral to tough at best. We're going to sit Cam Ward. I'm actually going to sit Tony Pollard this week, as this is just a tough matchup against the Kansas City defense. We're not playing any pass catchers for Tennessee as well. Joey Sly, we're going to sit. You could play the Tennessee Titans defense if you think Minshew might be game for a few mistakes or not. But essentially, we're sitting all Titans except for a potential streaming defense option. On to our next game here, a 1 o'clock Sunday kickoff here. We have the Cincinnati Bengals heading into the Miami Dolphins. Both these teams since eliminated from the playoffs. And the over-under on this game is 50.5 points. The Bengals come in at 4-10. The Miami Dolphins come in at 6-8. And let's start with the Cincinnati side of our options here. Joe Burrow, I was actually surprised. He's rated as the 31st quarterback in terms of points per game. And this matchup is a good matchup, not great. I'm going to put him as a could play. I think he's going to rebound quite well, actually, but just in terms of rankings and matchups, it's not a smash play, but I think he could play this week for you as well. Especially if you had Mahomes, for example, I'd play Burrow over Minshew. Let's just put it that way. Chase Brown, rated as number 21 against the team that gives the 16th fewest, right in the middle here. He is a should play as well, or could play rather. Jamar Chase is a tough matchup in terms of what the defense allows to receivers here. I think mostly because of the ball control the Dolphins do, generally speaking. However, Jamar Chase is always going to be your lineup. Just lower your expectations a little bit. Mike Gesicki, rated as the 41st tight end. However, the Dolphins give the third most points to the tight end position. Mike Gesicki could be in your lineup as a back end tight end. Evan McPherson, we're going to sit away from him this week. And the Cincinnati defense is one of my top streaming defenses this week, mainly because there might be a quarterback change in Miami. So let's get into Miami's side of the ball and see what we got going on here. Rumors are that they're going to sit Tua, but this matchup, regardless, is just really, really good against the Cincinnati Bengals, who give the third most points to quarterbacks. We've done this before. We did it when we try to put the random quarterback in and say it might work out well. It's really hard to do it, but this matchup is just really, 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 really good. I think you could play whatever quarterback starts for the Dolphins this week, unless they're going to bench one in the middle of the game. That might be the only reason you would maybe not want to play the quarterback here. So honestly, why don't we stay away from the quarterbacks, because we're not sure about how much playing time they are going to have, but doesn't mean we're going to stray away from their options, because even if they change quarterbacks during the game, the receiving options and running back options will stay in. Devon Achane, the fifth best running back in terms of points per game, is playing against a team who gives the most points to the running back position. Devon Achane is always going to be in your lineup, but expect big things. Devon Achane is a must start. Jalen Waddle is rated number 19, and honestly, this is the only spot of the Cincinnati defense that holds up, mainly because they give up points to the tight ends and the running backs. Jalen Waddle, I'm going to put as a could play, as the Cincinnati Bengals give up the fifth fewest points to wide receivers. Again, that's circumstantial here, so you could play him as a flex. I would, as a flex, maybe a wide receiver too, but in that range. Darren Waller, this comes down. I have him as a smash play, guys. They get the Cincinnati Bengals give the most points to tight ends. However, we just don't know how this if it's yours, how he's going to spread the ball around. Although if he's smart, he's going to throw to his number one tight end in this good matchup. Riley Patterson, kicker's been kicking quite well. A neutral matchup. He could play in this for you this week. And the defense for Miami has been playing better as of late. Last week this past Monday night was a little less, But against Cincinnati gives the third most points to defenses here. So again, they are a streaming option as well. I'd actually pick Cincinnati over Miami in terms of streaming, but they're both in that same range. All right, guys, thanks for sticking with me. Again, so many games. Our last game we're going to go through here in our preview is the New York Jets at 3-11 and falling apart even more than they already have been against the New Orleans Saints, who are hot at 4-10. The over-under is 40.5, and New Orleans is favored. New Orleans is favored by 4.5 points at home. I'm going with the under on this one, and I'm going to have New Orleans cover and win this game. Let's get over to the New York side of the ball. Honestly, I don't know who is going to be their quarterback this week. They waived their backup quarterback from last week, Adrian Martinez, which indicates to me that one of, if not both, Justin Fields and Tyrod Taylor will be returned to the active roster. But I don't know if they're going to get back in the starting lineup, if they stick with Brady Cook or not. So I don't know which New York Jets quarterback is going to play. Nonetheless, none of them are very good. And the New Orleans Saints give up the 11th fewest, so we're just going to stay away from the passing game altogether for the Jets. Let's just go through this quicker. It's the Jets are crying out loud. We're going to sit the quarterback. We're going to sit Adonai Mitchell. We're going to sit Mason Taylor. We're going to sit Nick Folk, and we're going to sit the Jets defense. The only player we can play here is Breece Hall, who is the 20th ranked running back in terms of points per game, and the Saints give up the 14th most. So kind of right in the middle, but he's the only thing going. Breece Hall, I think, is going to bounce back in this game and have a decent showing. Now for the Saints side, this one's a little more fun. We got Tyler Shough, potential streamer for you this week. He is now rated as the 33rd quarterback in terms of points per game, jumping 6 spots from last week, and he's still hot, and expected to be better here against a middle-of-the-road defense. I got him as a could play as a back-end streamer here. Devin Neal, it all depends on if he's going to play or not. This matchup is great for the running game for the New Orleans Saints. So if it's Devin Neal, Audric Estime, whoever is going to be the starter, you've got to put him in your lineup. This is a should start for whatever running back is going to be playing for the New Orleans Saints. Chris Olave has been playing quite well lately. He's actually up to number 16 overall in points per game for wide receivers, and a neutral matchup against the Jets. However, there's no reason that this should hold him back here. He is a should play as well. Juwan Johnson has fallen back a little bit. He was 10th going into last week. Now he's fallen to 15th in terms of tight ends points per game. A neutral matchup. He is a could play as a back end tight end. Not good enough to be a flex. And we like the kicker for the Saints here, Charlie Smythe. I don't know if it's Smith or Smythe, sorry. From Ireland here. Playing against the Jets, who have the second most points to kickers. We're going to put Smythe in our lineup. And the New Orleans Saints defense, another streaming defense here for me. They're rated number 20 in terms of what they score, but the Jets give up the 6th most points to opposing defenses in terms of fantasy. So this is another streaming option as well. And I think that's it. Oh, one more thing I want to say real quick here. I guess Taysom Hill, no one's going to pick him up to put in their lineup. But if these running backs are really banged up, we saw Tyler Shough get banged up last week, so he might be less likely to run this particular week. There might be more packages for Taysom Hill this week than usual. Honestly, if he's listed as a tight end in your league, I'd play Taysom Hill over Juwan Johnson, especially if Devin Neal is out. All right, guys, I know we went through a lot of stuff there. I appreciate you sticking along with me. I'm trying to get through all these games here so we can try kind of, give you some information here. We'll get through the last 8 games on our Friday show if everything comes out on time. With that being said, guys, thank you for sticking with me, guys. We only got a couple more shows left before the season is over. Good luck to you guys who are still in the playoffs, and for those of you who aren't, hey, thanks for sticking around and staying with me. I appreciate your time. With that being said, guys, you can find our audio feeds on your favorite podcasting platform. Just search Wingman the League and we'll come to the top of your search. Hey, and while you're there, hit that follow button and give us a 5-star rating. And don't be afraid to share our show with your friends. That's how we get new listeners. And if you want to see our show, we have our show on our YouTube channel at wingmanfantasyfootball.com/YouTube or youtube.com/@wingmanfantasyfootball. When you head over there, guys, do me the favor, hit that like button, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and leave a comment, guys. Let us know how you made out this past week with the Rome Odunze Goose and the Isaiah Likely Goose. All right, guys, with that being said, may your glasses be full, Your mugs stay frosty, and we will see you next time.